Alright, now I want to say a few words about what's a pretty central passage in the Gospel of Matthew, and that's the Sermon on the Mount. Again, you see the Moses story is kind of being played out in the Sermon on the Mount. Where did Moses get the law from God? He goes on a mount, Mount Sinai, and God gives him the law. Well, Jesus goes up on a mountain and interprets the law. Again, there's a complete parallel to not a complete, but there's a parallel to Moses here. Moses goes up and gets the law on a mountain. Jesus goes up on a mountain and interprets the law. Now, a lot of people think that maybe Jesus said you don't have to follow the law anymore. That's what Paul says. Paul says you don't have to follow the law anymore. But Jesus, in the Sermon on the Mount, when he gives the interpretation of the law, actually says the opposite of what Paul says. Jesus in Matthew says you have to continue following the law. If you look at chapter 5, I'm looking at Matthew chapter 5, starting with verse 17. He says, "Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have come not to abolish, but to fulfill. For truly I tell you, until heaven and earth pass away, not one letter, not one stroke of a letter will pass from the law until all is accomplished." Now this, not one letter, not one stroke of a letter. He's saying, my name starts with a C, Craig. When I was a little kid, I'd draw a little curly Q at the top of the C. That's a stroke of a letter. He's saying you can't get rid of one letter of the law. In addition, you can't get rid of even a little curly Q on a letter of the law. That's how important the law is. You got to hang on to the whole thing, every single letter, every single dot on an I, every single cross on a T, every single curly Q on a C or whatever. You cannot let the law go. I have not come to abolish the law, but to fulfill it. For truly I tell you, until heaven and earth pass away, not one letter, not one stroke of a letter will pass from the law until it is all accomplished. Therefore, whoever breaks one of the least of these commandments and teaches others to do the same will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever does them and teaches them will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. So you have a choice here. Are you going to be great in the kingdom of heaven? Well, then you need to follow the law and teach it. You want to be least in the kingdom of heaven? Well, then you can ignore the law. It's a pretty clear message. The law is very important. Now he goes on and gives a teaching about anger, adultery, divorce, giving oaths, and retaliation, love for the enemies. Each of these is sometimes portrayed as a reversal. So for instance, the most obvious one that seems like a reversal, I'm going to argue that they're not a reversal at all, but the one that seems like a reversal is love for concerning retaliation. So if you look at chapter 5, verse 38, you have heard that it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. This means if someone stabs out my eye in a fight, I can take their eye. If someone breaks out one of my teeth, I can break out one of their teeth. That's what the law says in the Hebrew Scriptures. That's part of the law that Moses brought down from Mount Sinai. You have heard that it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, but I say to you, do not resist an evildoer. If anyone strikes you on the right cheek, turn the other also. If anyone wants to sue you and take your coat, give your cloak as well. If anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go also the 2nd mile. So the idea is it used to be the case that you could take an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, but I'm reversing it and making it such that when someone does violence against you, you turn the other cheek. It seems like a reversal. It's not a reversal. Note, all of these passages are parallel and none of the others seem like reversals at all. All of the other ones make something more strict. Okay, so we have this passage that looks like a reversal. Jesus says, you've heard it said that you could retaliate, a tooth for tooth, eye for an eye. I'm actually saying that's not the case. Now you have to turn the other cheek. It looks like a reversal of what the law says. I'm actually suggesting the opposite. It's not a reversal of the law. It's actually making the law stricter. Now let's look at some of the other passages because they all follow the same pattern that I'm going to suggest. They're not reversals. They make the law more strict. The first one concerns anger. If you look in chapter 5, verse 21, you have heard that it was said to those of ancient times, you shall not murder. He means back when the law was given to you through Moses, you have heard it said, you shall not murder. And whoever murders shall be liable to judgment. But I say to you that if you are angry with a brother or sister, you will be liable to judgment. And if you insult a brother or sister, you will be liable to counsel. And if you say, you fool, you will be liable to the hell of fire. Here he says, it used to be the case that murder was forbidden. You can't murder. He's saying, I'm making it more strict. Not only can you not murder, you can't even get angry with people. You cannot even call someone a fool. So before you could go, maybe you could be angry, but you couldn't go so far as to kill. He says, I'm making it more strict. You can't kill and you can't be angry. Look at the next one about adultery. He says in verse 27, again this is chapter 5, verse 27, you have heard that it was said, you shall not commit adultery, but I say to you that everyone who looks at a woman with lust has already committed adultery in his heart. So this passage where Jesus says, it used to be the case you could not commit adultery. I'm saying not only can you not commit adultery, but you can't even commit lust towards that other person. If you're lusting, you've already committed adultery. So again, don't murder, I'm making it more strict. Don't even be angry. Don't commit adultery, I'm making it more strict. Don't even experience lust. Now here, concerning retaliation, this one, how is it making the law more strict? Here's how. The idea that you could tear out an eye for an eye or a tooth for tooth was actually intended in the Hebrew Scriptures as a limiting principle. So that, let's say my friend Chris gets in a fight with me, and let's say my friend Chris gets in a fight with me, and he pokes out a tooth of mine. What do I want to do in reverse? Do I want to knock out one of his teeth? Yeah, but I probably want to go farther. I probably want to knock out 3 of his teeth. Not really, I'm not really a violent guy. This is just for the sake of argument. I might want to do more than he did to me. If he steals $5 from my wallet, maybe I want to steal $20 from his wallet. If he hits my car, maybe I want to hit his car twice as hard. I don't know, whatever you think of. The idea is that you might want to retaliate more than what was imposed upon you in the first place. This law limits it, saying you can only retaliate equally. So if someone steals $10 from you, you can't steal $100 back. You can only take $10 back. If someone punches you and knocks out a tooth, you can't knock out 10 of his teeth. You can only knock out 1 in turn. It's a limiting principle saying you can't go further than equal retaliation. Now when it's taken this way, it's pretty clear how this is not a reversal, but making it more strict. So Jesus says, you've heard it said that you could go so far as to have equal retaliation. However, I'm saying you can't even go that far. If someone hits you, you can't hit them back equally. You can't even hit them back at all. That's how this is an example of Jesus making the law more strict rather than reversing the law. So these passages here, Jesus is not rejecting the law. Jesus is not saying the law is not important any longer. You can ignore the law. He's actually doing just the opposite. He's saying you have to follow the law. It's very important that you follow the law. Not one letter, not one stroke of a letter should pass away, but you should follow the law. If you want to be last in the kingdom of heaven, then you can go ahead and break it. But if you want to be first in the kingdom of heaven, you have to follow every little bit. And in addition, as an addendum, all those laws, I'm going to make them actually more strict. You haven't even been following it as good as you should. I'm going to make it more strict. You have to make it even tougher for yourselves. Okay, that's all I'm going to say about this right now.